So as I started to look at the different connotations of intervention, I became interested in the idea of producing a model, a representation to move me along in my own understanding of intervention as a cultural issue. And this is what I came up with. And again, this is just a draft, a first model. So if we take an example, let's take the example of the A&E show Intervention, which is quite popular, where family, friends, co-workers try to intervene in the life of an individual who is dealing with drug and alcohol issues. You could see here within the model, we could understand that context. So the outside world, so as anyone is watching the show and trying to understand the addict in his or her world, you have that specific space or context, which is represented by the large oval there. Within that, then, we have two actors. And when I use two actors, this doesn't have to be specific to a person. If we're talking about nation states and interventions, such as the intervention that the United States has discussed in the case in Syria right now, obviously the actors could be the United States and Syria. But in this case of the addiction issues, you could see that actor one would represent the person who's struggling with the addiction. Actor two would be an individual, a loved one, family members, co-workers who are trying to intervene and change the life course of this individual. So as I represented visually, something that actor two does acts on the life of actor one. So you see the arrow coming from the right to left, indicating this force that pushes somehow into the life world or pushes up against the actor who is the subject, in this case, of the intervention in a show like the A&E one. Now, what I'm struggling with a little bit, and this is what is leading me to look at my project more carefully, is what exactly is, in this case, actor two bringing to the table. So in that moment of intervention, is it a set of values? Is it a specific ideology? Is it a type of discourse, a rhetorical mode, some sort of psychological performativity that's being used to act on or change actor one in this case of intervention? So those terms in blue I'm still struggling with as far as what's actually represented in this context of intervention. And the other thing I should mention then is I'm particularly going to look at and maybe remodel and do some additional models of this point of this arrow. And that to me is maybe the crux of it, and I don't know if we would call that the discourse of intervention. Again, I'm just playing through these ideas for an initial run here. But it seems to me that in any case, whether it's the case of the addict and his or her family acting in that moment of intervention, or in the case of the United States saying we will intervene as the nation state goes into Syria and makes an intervention, in both cases we note some things. We note there's an inequality at play. So these two parties are not equal. And then secondly, the context, or again, the values, the cultural context, the ideology that the one side, in this case actor two, is bringing to actor one, perhaps would be at odds. Because clearly, if you're intervening as a family concerned about your loved one who is addicted to methamphetamine, you're not going to be using necessarily the values, the life world, the instances from the life of the addict. You will act on those through this context of intervention. So what I really want to do next, and some of you can kind of help me work through this, is to really model that moment of intervention and try to figure that out, and that will allow me to apply my own specific context of intervention, which is the case of consultancy in popular culture. So much more to be said about this, but this is an initial attempt to model this moment of intervention.